Welcome back to Inside Sources. In this segment, I'm going to feature a member of the National Working Committee of the ADC, who is also a lawyer and a columnist, who I'm delighted to welcome back to Inside Sources. And I'm talking of Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo. Rocket.
Hey, my brother.
Good to see you again.
Me too.
It's been a while.
Yes, and thank you, viewers, for joining us.
Excellent. So let's just get into it. This last few days, the Senate had a plenary session where the Senate president said, look, the ruling about electronic transmission of results is that we're going to leave it the way that it was in 2022, the act. Now, before you answer that, the background is that both members of the House of Reps and the National Assembly, their electoral committees, agreed that, look, we need to mandate electronic transmission of results. They all agreed. The Senate members, the House of Reps members, they agreed. There were all kinds of retreats and meetings, behind the scenes stuff. But here comes Senator Godswill Akpabio and attempting to knock all of that down. Mr. Okonkwo, how do you respond to this?
Well, let's say that it's pathetic, it's depressing, and very irritating that the Senate president, that is the first amongst equal, he's just a senator, that his own colleagues chose to preside over them, will unilaterally, in cahoot with some of his gang in the National Senate, try to cunningly and surreptitiously overrule the entire Senate. Now, let us even say the whole idea of Electoral Act 2022 was to introduce technology and electronic transmission of results. That is the whole reason for it. If you recall, President Buhari, the first time they amended the act without putting the provision for the electronic transfer, he refused to assent to it until they put that provision. So the issue here is that there is an outcry that after the election of 2023 and the petition and the determination of the issue by the Supreme Court, people are no longer sure whether it is mandatory or discretionary on INEC to electronically transmit. And the Supreme Court noted that. Of course, I disagree that it was not mandatory. It was mandatory in Electoral Act 2022. But the Supreme Court is the final court. The Supreme Court noted that because of some vagueness in some sections, especially 60 subsection 5, where they use the word transfer without using the word transmit, that it could result in some vagueness. And then there is a need for the legislature to make it mandatory. Let me tell you the beautiful, notable pronouncement by Abba Aji, Justice of the Supreme Court, as he still is. He said, modernity and technology stare us in the face, and we cannot turn back the hand of time. He said, to go against the use of technology and electronic transmission and transfer of election results in this high-tech era and period is to be an enemy of democracy, and to stick to the vicious cycle of election rigging, manipulation, falsification, and subterfuge. This is the pronouncement of Abba Haji, Justice of the Supreme Court. And he went further to plead with the legislature that they should amend this.
Is it the 2023?
2023 article versus INEC. Number 2, 2023. 19 Nigeria Weekly Law Report, part 1917. 761 at page 876.
All right.
And in 877, the learned Judge Abba Aji of the Supreme Court went further to plead with the legislature to please nip this confusion in the bud by making it clear and unambiguous through amending the process that legislature, that INEC does not have any discretion, that it is mandatory. I had to state the case. Atiku's case was the only presidential appeal that was considered by the Supreme Court. So it is the only appeal now that tells you the position of the Supreme Court as long as presidential election is concerned, using the Electoral Act 2022. Now, some judges, even in that judgment, like Akomai again, was of the opinion that 2022 Act made it clear that electronic transmission is compulsory. He said it must be done. Wow. So the issue here is that some judges differed.
Yeah.
But the issue here is this. Why would the legislature prevaricate on an issue that the Supreme Court had told you that it encourages electoral rigging, manipulation, and makes you an enemy of democracy? What it means is that Senator Godswill Akpabio has become an enemy of democracy and is sticking to the vicious cycle of election rigging, manipulation, falsification, and subterfuge by trying to maintain the same provision that Supreme Court told you that if you do, you are an enemy of democracy. That man is an enemy of democracy and should be removed if he doesn't resign.
Wow. Well, I mean, it is quite a very serious matter, because I had a conversation with Mr. Clement Unwako, the day right after, and he said to me that, look, he is the executive director of Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, and they've been working with the National Assembly, behind the scene, even trying to facilitate some of the retreats. And he said that at all the retreats held in Lagos and other parts of the country, members, each of the houses, they have their electoral committee members. As a matter of fact, Senator Lalong, who was the DG for APC presidential election in 2023, was the chairman of the Senate Electoral Committee, and they all endorsed. They all endorsed this idea. Yeah, mandatory transmission. So
absolutely.
That is why many Nigerians, are quite outraged.
It is unbelievable.
So the next question I'd like to ask you is that.
Yes.
I know that, I don't know whether you are quite a politician, you are a new breed of politician. How is it possible?
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
That the Senate president can have that kind, let's even forget the audacity. But how can he prevail when the committee of Senate had recommended something that is different? How does that even happen?
In one word, corruption. When people hear corruption, they always rush to think it is only financial. No. Corruption is the abuse of public office for private gain. Corruption, the whole idea is for self-preservation. The whole idea is that they know they've lost the support of the Nigerian people. And so they want to rig the 2027 election before it even started. Look at shifting the notice, the time INEC will give notice.
By half.
No, what sense does it make? You know why? Because if they conduct their primary earlier, people who will be dissatisfied because they are going to implode will have the opportunity to find alternatives before the time.
So they want
personal gain. So they want to cut everything in order to make sure that they survive. Private gain. So this is simply corruption. And if you witnessed the proceeding of the House, you saw the way he just told somebody, move a motion, another second. Those in support say,
yeah.
Look, if you have been in such parliament, and I'm telling you the truth, At times, people will be just discussing because they know what they have already agreed on. So they will just be saying, I, in all this. They will not know
attention to
that some evil has been done. Let me tell you something. Even if Tinubu comes out unopposed in 2027, he will fail. Because our constitution is clear. That even if you are the only person that came out, they will still ask Nigerians to vote whether yes or no.
Right.
That you will, more people will vote no. How can you vote yes? No, let me tell you. Would there be any person that is saying that will transport himself under the new flight tickets cost of Tinubu, 500,000 naira, to go to his village, to go to the cubicle, to vote for Tinubu? No, is it possible? Okay, without preempting things. The person cannot even travel through the land because he will be afraid that he will be terrorized, kidnapped, or killed. The person cannot travel through the air because he can't afford the air ticket. The person cannot travel through the sea because, one, river may not have reached his village, and even if he travels, he will die. Can't you? You're hearing about boats capsizing every day.
Especially in Niger State. But the problem...
So it is hopeless. And they now want to rig the election before it starts. And they are making a mess of the Electoral Act 2022. Let me tell you, without mandatory electronic transmission of results, there is no Electoral Act that encourages technology.
Okay.
And INEC itself, of course, you know, the only reason we are doing this is because everybody has lost confidence in INEC. In that Supreme Court judgment, Justice Inyango Koro, Justice of the Supreme Court, as he still is, he said, truth be told, that the non-transmission of the election results into the INEC Rev portal in real time, electronically, reduced the confidence of the people in the election. And so what it means is that even the Supreme Court has understood that people lost confidence in that election because this was not electronically transmitted. And there is a Senate president because the legislature is the foundation of democracy, is the gatekeeper of democracy. The reason America is still standing today is because of the legislature that has refused to be compromised.
Of course.
And you have a Senate president who wants to rig election, who wants to manipulate election by Supreme Court's own submission, who wants Nigerians to lose confidence in the election. Because the Supreme Court has told you that the best way to make sure that the people have confidence in the election is immediately you finish in the polling unit, let them see their result in their own phone. And let me tell you, when people are debating, the legislature should better have an interpretative clause to every word they use. I told you that, in my own opinion, there were substantial provisions that made it mandatory for INEC to transfer and transmit. Section 62, good. Section 62, verse 2. Section 62, subsection 2. Is very clear. He said, INEC shall compile, maintain, and update on a continuous basis a register of election results, to be known as National Electronic Register of Election Results, which shall be a distinct database and a repository of polling unit by polling unit results, including collated results of any election organized by INEC. And they should maintain the electronic copy at their headquarters. What else do you need?
That's what the law says. Even
Section 62. Now, the Supreme Court now picked Section 62(1) and said this represents the manual transfer. And Section 62(2), which is the completion of the electronic transfer, you said no, it is post-election process. No. The interpretative canon of the law is that you interpret a section jointly, holistically, politically, not taking one subsection. One section is one section. So if the Supreme Court took 62(1), they must take 62(2) to complete the hybrid nature. That is actually the collation system they're talking about. 62-2. And they said on a continuous basis. Do you know what that means? Immediately you finish the election, transmit the polling unit. And each collation you finish, you transmit. So each level of collation is using that data, which they said repository of election result, to be used to guide you.
Okay, you know,
but then, because of that nebulosity, that confusion, there is nothing wrong in the legislature confirming it by amending it so that it will leave nobody in doubt.
All right, good. Let's move on, because I wanted to also talk about a few other things, you know, and our time is fast, you know, going very fast. The issue of insecurity persists. But something happened in this country on Christmas Day. You had the U.S. president, the U.S. government, you know, launch a series of Tomahawk missiles, I think about 12, you know, in southwest Nigeria.
Northwest.
Northwest. In northwest Nigeria, specifically Sokoto. So, since then also, you've had the Americans, you know, send us some equipment that they can help our intelligence. And then this last week, the Americans also sent a small team of military generals, military officials. Now, I want to ask you, Ken, how do you interpret this? Because I think that, hey, if you need help, you need help, you know. But I'd like to hear, what's your perspective?
My perspective, first and foremost, is that it is the colossal failure and admission of failure that Tinubu's government is incapable of protecting the lives and property of Nigerians. This is the first time in the history of this nation that a government will say they invited a foreign government to bomb our country. And do you know the most annoying thing that is making me to even want to cry? We heard about this bombing from America, not from Nigeria.
Although they confirmed it.
But he said that's what we heard.
You're right.
And I'm telling you, if we have not heard, they may not even have told you.
Oh, wow.
It's a shame. Everything that is happening, the troops are so called, we heard it from Americans. So can you imagine such thing, as sensitive as the security of the people, and a foreign country is performing the act in Nigeria, and we are hearing it from a foreign country? So it's a total mess. We need help. Yes, we do. Because life has no duplicate. Since January 1, what we have been hearing is stories of tears and blood. Kwara State, that used to be very peaceful before Tinubu came in, Kwara State is now under siege. That terrorists go out to tell people convert or be killed. That terrorists send letter beforehand. The village head will alert the security operatives, and nothing will be done until they are massacred. The only achievement Tinubu has made in security is to send verbal condolence messages and to speak empty words. That's the security objective will do, the security agency, nothing else. I'm sorry to tell you that it will still happen again.
But okay.
I want to tell you, the last time I was talking with you, last 2 years or thereabout, I told you these governments will fail. And the reason is this: they know the solution. But because of their own self-preservation, they don't want to cure it. Simple. State police. I remember I told you that 4 years you will see this state police will not come. You said you will be shocked. Because then they were saying they will soon do it, they will soon do it. The first year they came in, I said, look, first year is 25% of the government. Yeah. Now it's 75%. We're approaching the third year. Have you seen state police? That is why it will happen again. We have about 923,000 square kilometers of land in Nigeria. Look at how many we have in our security forces. Do you think that even when they are well equipped and well motivated, they will be able to oversee all? America, with its sophistication in technology, they have federal police, they have state police, they have community police. Yeah. Every university has its own police system. Why don't we have the same thing in Nigeria? You want to monopolize all the forces so that you can use them to intimidate and manipulate the system for your self-preservation. That is all. So, unfortunately, do you know the annoying thing? In Tinubu's regime, people are killed not only by human terrorists, but by even animals. A young lady, rising star, if the lady with the golden voice, a snake, beat her.
Are you going to hold the president?
Absolutely. They went to all the medical centers and all the hospitals. Anti-snake venom was not there. Johesu, 90 days have been on strike. And this is a government that is borrowing all this money, that has stopped fuel subsidy, and the health system has collapsed. If that health system was working, that lady would be alive. I can't remember the last time I heard that snake bite killed somebody. But look at this rising star. But have you not noticed that one young lady that was the best nurse 2025, Chinemerem Chimeziem, died? One chance, people. Security coming in FCT.
In Abuja.
Security, rising star. Why is it that you saw how the treasurer, former treasurer of MBA, a lady, Nwabo, princess, died? One chance. Why is it that it is rising stars that are being killed in Tinubu's regime? Why is it that it is women and children that are dying? Any government that is evil has a way of killing women and children. The World Bank report, no, the United Nations report, you said Nigeria has now the highest maternal mortality rate. 1 out of every 100 women that give birth dies. That same instrument that is the channel of joy has become channel of tears in Nigeria. 56% of the women give birth at home because they can't afford hospital. They can't afford transportation. 35% of the people, 35 million, are now in abject poverty. They can't afford food. 130 million are in poverty, and 10 million is being added every day. We are in a sorry state in this country. Only God can save us. And that is why we must have to make sure that everything about the election is straightened out, all the amendments, so that Nigerians will choose whether to continue in this abject misery, poverty, or degradation of their lives, or choose a new life.
Thank you so much for coming to Inside Sources. Thank you for your voice. And thank you for the passion that your voice carries.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Always.